Welcome to the Character Sheet, comic book's official home for all things tabletop and fantasy. I am Christian Hoffer, and today I am joined by a very special guest, and we're here to talk about a very special project. So, hello, Andrew. How are you doing
Hey,
today?
I am
Uh,
excellent. Thank you, Christian.
so,
Really thrilled to be here. Happy to chat with you about Ember and other stuff too.
yeah. So, Andrew, first question. You are the creator of a little thing that probably a lot of tabletop RPG people know about. But maybe they don't know who you are. So, what exactly do you do in the tabletop RPG space in general?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm Andrew Clayton. I'm the creator of Foundry Virtual Tabletop. It's an online tool for playing tabletop role-playing games or things like board games together online with your friends or in person. Lots of people use Foundry VTT as a digital game aid at the physical table as well. But yeah, it's a virtual tabletop software. We have support for about 300 different game systems that you can play in Foundry VTT, and a huge catalog of premium modules, content from major publishers, D&D, Pathfinder, Warhammer, Free League, you name it. And then also a really robust ecosystem of modding, module development. So Foundry VTT, one of the things we pride ourselves on is a very open API. And so from the developer perspective, people are able to create amazing plugins, add-ons that enhance and modify the experience. So it's extremely customizable. It's a platform that gives you a ton of tools to play all sorts of different games in all sorts of different ways. And Foundry VTT released back in 2020. So a little earlier this year, we celebrated our 4th anniversary. And a couple of years ago, sort of halfway between then and now, we started behind the scenes work on another major project, which is now on Kickstarter. So we've been very, very busy. Yeah, so that's, I guess, a very quick intro, although happy to unpack any of that you're interested to know more about.
Well, all I'm going to say about Foundry is that literally everybody I know who uses it raves about it. It's one of those things where it's like once you start using it, you don't go back. And I think that more people are going to start using it soon because, as you mentioned, you have this new project on Kickstarter called Ember. We talked a little bit about this beforehand. Ember is a campaign setting, and it's also kind of the delivery system of sorts for a brand new RPG system, but also can be used with 5th edition. So why don't we start? What exactly is Ember? What sort of world is it? What is it all about?
Of course, yeah. So Ember is an online tabletop role-playing game. It's a hybrid between the conventional tabletop RPGs that you're used to playing, pen and paper, at a physical table, and a purely digital game experience. So the digital side of Ember is very inspired by games like Baldur's Gate or Neverwinter Nights or Owlcat's Pathfinder or Pillars of Eternity or Divinity Original Sin or any of these great CRPGs that have really engaging gameplay and systems, whether it's for solo play or for multiplayer. We're really grabbing the things from those sorts of games that we are most passionate about and that we love the most, and trying to think about how can we incorporate those things into a traditional tabletop experience of collaborative storytelling with a game master and with a group of players, where it's still about agency. It's still about the game master is leading the experience, the players are reacting, you're together telling the story, but we're bringing in tricks and tools and experiences and interactivity and immersion that you get with a more dynamic digital product. And like you said, Ember is a setting. It's an epic length campaign in that setting. You can use it in all sorts of different ways. You can play our end-to-end epic campaign that would keep you and your group of players busy for over 2 years of gameplay. Or you can use it as a launching off point for more short form narrative. Ember is comprised of up to 40 individual quests, and each quest line that has its own branching choices and consequences and narrative arcs and characters and monsters and areas to explore. Each one of those quests is probably about a 3 to 4 session experience, and you can play those individually if you're looking for something more short form, or you can use Ember just as a setting, as a launching off point for telling your own stories in this amazing and vibrant, imaginative fantasy world that we've created. So there's lots of ways you can use the product. As you mentioned, it supports both D&D 5th edition, designed for compatibility with the 2024 rules going forward, and alternatively, a original system that we're creating in-house called Crucible, which is similar in some ways to D&D, but also quite different in other ways, in that it's a dice pool-based system, classless advancement. It has a very robust kind of freeform talent tree that's inspired by games like Path of Exile, where you're building up your character from scratch as you go. And it's mechanically a little bit more sophisticated, I would say, because since it is built for digital, it's a game system that really leans into doing things that might be a little bit more cumbersome to do pen and paper, but the software makes it really easy to play. And so we're trading off some of that crunch or mechanical complexity with things that abstracts away from that the software is doing for you. So yeah, I can talk about both of those. Certainly the reason we wanted to do both of these things is because we wanted EMBER to be as approachable and interesting to people as possible, and offering both a way that's really familiar and broadly loved and very accessible like D&D as a way to experience the game, while also offering kind of our vision, our preferred new thing that may be for some people, but may not be for everyone. So, you know, having both flavors of EMBER was the way that we were able to accomplish that.
So there's two paths that we're going to take here. The first is talking about EMBER as a campaign setting, and then the second one is kind of digging in to the nitty gritties about how one creates a game system and a campaign specifically made for VTTs.
Yeah,
But
sure.
I want to talk about what exactly EMBER is. You know, how, like, give me a pitch on the world of EMBER. Is it high fantasy? Is it
Yeah.
steampunk? You know, what exactly is the compelling, like, thrust of EMBER?
Sure. So let me share my screen for a little bit. I can talk and I can show, and I think the visual side of it will help reinforce some of the things that I'm seeing. So what's on my screen right now is one of EMBER's Vistas. EMBER is an imaginative fantasy setting. That's kind of the term we use. And of course, all fantasy is imaginative. And so, like, what does that actually mean? It's a little bit closer to high fantasy, but it is not the traditional sort of sword and sorcery analog of medieval Europe that you're perhaps used to in some conventional settings. So it is going for a very vibrant, kind of different type of setting that is still relatively high fantasy. So one of the things that EMBER does in a very cool way, everything you're seeing here is inside Foundry Virtual Tabletop. So this is pre-alpha footage of the game inside Foundry VTT. One of EMBER's very cool features is what we call Vistas. And so these are scenes of the world that can have characters, depict environments, showcase different aspects of the world, and they're fully linked with things like the time progression in the world. And so as I advance time here, like the scene changes and the moons in the sky evolve as the cosmology of the setting changes. So speaking of that cosmology, and this is going to be a little bit of a whirlwind tour, I suppose, given the need to get to a few different topics, but EMBER has its own really unique and distinctive cosmology. It's kind of an all-in-one setting. EMBER is all a physical space. There's no parallel planes or alternate dimensions. The cosmos of EMBER is a place that has its 6 elemental moons, 3 inner planes, and of course, the sort of disk-like world of EMBER itself at the center of the cosmos. And much like the Vista system, the cosmology of EMBER is totally interlinked with the gameplay. So again, as time advances in EMBER, the cosmos progresses and the position of moons change, the realms rotate around and the seasons shift. And these changes, time of day, the disposition, the position of the moons in the sky, whether they're at a zenith or a conjunction, these things affect gameplay of some of the dynamic events that happen during the story or as you're exploring the world. Different mechanics work in different ways as the moons are in different positions. And like they represent some of the sort of analog of things that you might otherwise have in a D&D setting, like an elemental plane of fire. Instead, we have the moon Rajan, which is this scorched sort of former paradise that embodies the element of fire in our space. And so a lot of things are sort of similar, but reinterpreted in a way that really works for our lore and works for our setting. But ultimately, this is all backdrop. to what is fundamentally a very rich sort of experience of exploring the world. So this is what you might see as a player when you're just getting started in the world, and you're sort of moving about and you're exploring all of the different biomes of the world. So here we've discovered a new biome as we progress, or we're kind of continuing on, and the time of day advances. As we continue our progression for the day, we maybe camp down at some point. If I unselect this as the GM, you can see sort of a much larger view of sort of the different areas of the world, all of the different biomes. As I'm kind of zooming out and panning across here, we've got this very rich and diverse world of lots of different places that you can explore. It's a huge map. So each hex here in this sort of hex exploration context is 1 mile of in-game space, and there's 25,000 individual hexes that you can explore in Ember as you are progressing around the world. And so, for example, at some points you might discover a location, and perhaps some element of gameplay happens in that location. And when that gameplay happens, we can go into a scene, we can go into one of these vistas where the game master is able to run the event that is happening here, and you've got all of these characters that you can interact with. They're kind of vibrant and living in the scene, so you can move them around and position them to have the conversations between your companions or party members that you want to have. There's gameplay that happens in all of these scenes, and it's a way to kind of do something that's much more sort of theater of the screen as an alternative or an enhancement upon theater of the mind that usually is what happens when you're playing a game experience like this. So we're really taking a very visual approach. There's music, there's sound that accompanies all of these things, so that all of these gameplay moments are really trying to pull you into the world and really immerse you in the gameplay that's happening as you explore. So yeah, I'll pause for a moment, because otherwise I'll just kind of keep rambling on about all the things that Ember does, but you can let me know what sort of thing you'd like to unpack a little bit more.
Yeah, of course. So I got 2 questions. The first is, so we've seen kind of like the exploration. The vistas obviously can serve as like role playing prompts, sort of, as you mentioned, like theater of the screen per se. So first, with these like vistas, how many different types of vistas are there? Are there like individual vistas crafted for individual events that may occur throughout the campaign?
Yeah, that's right. So our vistas, we have overall in total, I think there's about 24 of them that are
Okay.
planned. We've got about 14 of them that we've made so far. And they're all for different biomes or signature locations of the world. And they could be used for exploration. They could be used just for narrative storytelling. So I'll get rid of this cast of characters. This is a vista for one of our biomes, the one that I was showing you just before on the region map. This biome is called the Verdant Paths, and this biome has a bunch of different like configurations of the vista. So there's like lots of different versions of it that you can use for different events. These could be staged events. Some of them are just sort of generic versions, like here if you're at like a campsite, like you're camping down for the evening, or they can be ones that are for like a very particular gameplay moment. For example, the moonstone that I showed just before, or this like giant doorway that you encounter, and it's like this puzzle of like, what is this door and how do you open it and what does it mean? And as the game master, sometimes it's either like the gameplay that's written for that event will place characters into a scene like this, and you'll be in a position to interact with those characters as you are meeting NPCs or encountering allies or adversaries. And so it's a way to have just lots of like dynamic storytelling moments. And moreover, one of the very coolest things about Vistas is the whole system is built in a way that you can actually create your own as a game master. So if I switch over to like a blank one, I won't take the time to do this fully, but there's a whole builder where I can use this builder, and the UI is it's going to be evolved as we go, but like I can place like stone pillars around here. We'll put some cliffs back here. This is a very rocky terrain, so I'm gonna like make something here with lots of rocks, and then maybe some ground rocks that I just like drop in. And this is something that as a game master I can do on the fly. So we'll put some trees in, maybe one in the foreground. and everything comes in, and you can take, you know, a minute, you can take 5 minutes, but you can like fully sort of decorate out this environment on the fly. And we have ones that we've provided automatically, you know, already built in. And I won't spend more time decorating than this, but you know, that was just a few seconds and it already
Yeah.
looks pretty nice. If I took a couple minutes, I could really create like an absolutely beautiful scene. And all of our biomes have this support. So this is just one, but we've got all of the others biomes that you can encounter, and you can make these sort of storytelling moments to stage, you know, for encounters with characters or creatures or whatnot. But yeah, I kind of dove a little bit deeply on things that the Vista system can do. They're not all just wilderness areas. So for example, I will show quickly a one that's like a much more sort of social scene in our great city. So one of the things in our game is there's this very large cosmopolitan metropolis of Ordain at the center of the Arctis Plateau, which is the name of the region you explore. And this is like a sort of gala social moment where it's a very sort of important plot event in one of our quest lines. And so this is obviously like not a wilderness biome, but it's a different example of the type of scene that you can have with a Vista. And just like the ones that I showed before, you know, you can put all of the characters of the game into the Vista, and you can drop them in, and you can have encounters with them or conversations or whatnot. So hopefully that answered part of your question, although I may have failed to get to a little bit of it. I don't know. Let me know.
No, this was a really fascinating look into the Vista system. So we saw the exploration. Obviously, the Vistas are kind of for like role playing or working through a scene. You know, are there like combat specific maps as well, or is that
Yes, there are. We love that, and sort of challenging and tactical combat is one of the really key things that we want to emphasize in the game. And we have maps that are really beautifully drawn and rendered for those sorts of events. I can be happy to show a couple of those and what they look like in just kind of quick succession. So for example, here's a very dramatic scene where you and your allies are on a ship in the ocean, you know, going from one island to another. They're all kind of have this like sort of animation and dynamic touches. Like we can sort of open the cargo hold here, or we can, you know, go into the captain's cabin over here. And, you know, there's multiple levels in each scene that you can explore. They're not all like, some of them are a little bit more exploration focused. Some of them are dungeons. So I'll go over to one and show some of the other interactive elements that we have. So this is like one of our sort of puzzle dungeons that we have. I'll drag your character over here. This character token is one of our unique ancestries called the Drakon. And if there's time, I'd love to show a little bit about like what that character creation process looks like. But, you know, these sort of dungeons that you can explore, these are like the kinds of like area maps you're accustomed to seeing in like a print book, except just way more interactive, way more dynamic in terms of the visual storytelling that happens here. And of course, we love combat. We love challenging tactical encounters and adversaries. Ember has its own bestiary of about 150 unique creatures that you will encounter that you will have never faced or seen before to challenge you. There's also puzzles in each of these dungeons. So this dungeon has a sort of really interesting kind of light beam mirror puzzle. Oh, here's one of those adversaries right there. We'll pretend you're not fighting the Kadrathax right now, but if you were, that would be, you know, something you'd have to face. But yeah, there's this kind of very cool interactive for players sort of light beam puzzle where you need to kind of traverse the dungeon, connecting this beam in order to unlock certain areas and to solve its mysteries. The dungeon is also full of traps. So if I heedlessly walk down this hallway, I've just triggered this like very animated and like interactive blade trap, and I need to make my my dexterity saving throw here. And so yeah, it's all sort of very, you know, there's a lever over here that opens the secret door. All the hashtag spoilers, I guess, but you know, there's just one little part of the dungeon. An example of the types of sort of like interactive sort of the interactive elements that we have in areas like this to challenge players and to kind of entertain them as they're exploring. It's obviously the kind of thing that you can never really do in a print book, but something that can work really uniquely well in a fully digital product.
You know, we could probably spend like another hour talking about this, but you know,
I would love to. I would love to, as I'm sure you're probably guessing.
yeah, I know, but let's kind of end things with, let's talk a little bit about character creation process. Now, obviously, if you know, I'm assuming Foundry has a character creation process that's built in for specifically for Ember, correct?
Yes, it does. So our character creation in Ember is unique. It kind of builds a whole layer on top of the way that character creation in Foundry usually works. So if I go ahead and again, this is all pre-alpha, but
Yeah.
if I go ahead and make a character here, it's going to take me into the character creation interface here, where we can choose from all of Ember's 16 unique ancestries. Each of which has a really kind of engaging description and example artwork of what that ancestry looks like. Each ancestry has unique gameplay features that you get if you choose that ancestry. And yeah, you can kind of look through all of these and see the sorts of types of characters that you can make in Ember. I'll make a Wirren for this demo. We'll do a Wirren, maybe a Wirren Warlock. Sounds edgy. Yeah, and so this is, of course, the D&D 5th edition version of the character creator, but Crucible has slightly different attributes and rules that would, you know, and something like this is what happens in Crucible as well. It's just exactly what you're choosing at some of these steps is slightly different. But for the D&D version, of course, as you know, a character in D&D has at least in the 2024 rules and forward, their species and their background. And so ancestry is our Ember analog of species. And then the background is the combination of culture, path, and attunement. So culture is sort of the people that you grew up among, or who you view as home. It doesn't necessarily have to be where you grew up. It could be just where you currently live, or what cultural group you identify with most closely. And you get unique features from your culture as well. Path is sort of similar to backstory, or like the backstory component of your background. And path kind of defines sort of what you've done, and you get a further chance to increase your ability scores there. Attunement is a link between your character and the cosmology of the setting. So I mentioned all of the elemental moons before, but there are other components of Ember's cosmology that you can choose at character creation to kind of link your character to part of that cosmology in a way that uniquely affects you and evolves with you as you progress in the story. And then lastly, but certainly not least, we have a really amazing character creator token builder. Now, cool. I guess in hindsight, I was wrong to choose Wirren, because we've implemented a bunch of our ancestries into the token maker so far, but Wirren is not one that we've finished yet. So I'll show a Zeph instead. They're a kind of wind-born, like wind folk. And you can see as I just like randomize through here, you can kind of create all manner of different heroes. These are just totally random draws. Some of them look a little bit funky. Some of them are really good. Some of them you need to, you know, touch up yourself a little bit in order to really make them work for you. But you can have full control over the various like colors. So say I like this one, but I don't think the red really works on the cloth. So I'm going to switch it to a more kind of lime green on the mask. And I want, you know, my eyes to be this bright, you know, this bright blue glow. You know, I can customize all these different aspects of the character. I can choose, you know, equipment. If I want, you know, instead of a quiver on my back, I want like a lyre. I'm going to be like a bard or something. You can configure all of these different aspects of your character appearance, and then that is the animated token that you get when you're exploring these areas in the world. So yeah, it's a really great, I'm just gonna cancel out of this, but it's a really great thing that lets you really see, like, here's the character we just made, a character creation put into this dungeon with the sort of animated token and everything. So that's a quick like whirlwind intro to our character creation process. If I could, one other quick thing that I think would be fun to show is the codex.
Yeah, please.
So I reset this game back to the beginning, so there's not too much in here right now, but you have a journal of events that's automatically entered in as your game progresses. So for example, suppose this giant moonstone event that I showed previously, suppose we completed it. Now in our codex, there's an automatically entered, journal record in there that event occurred. And furthermore, all of the different locations in the world that you can encounter and learn about, so many different creatures that you might encounter and fight against that get unlocked within your codex. Characters, of course, you've seen some of this artwork that I dropped into the Vistas. As you encounter these characters, the codex is sort of like a tome of knowledge of sorts that for the players and for the GM, the players only see things that they've actually encountered. But you would have all of this information in here at your fingertips. It's kind of the perfect GM assistant that helps you remember what happened, when it happened, who you met, what you've done. And it keeps this kind of living chronicle of your campaign that you get to grow and carry on with you over the course of playing in Ember for hopefully multiple years. So yeah, that's another, it's not quite character creation, but it's kind of a cool secondary feature.
That is a really cool feature. So last question for now. Obviously we can dig into more on this. We'll clearly have to have you back on the channel here. But how much is this going to cost? If the Kickstarter's live, so they can just go, but to the link and see. But if I want to back this and I want to have access to this, how much is this going to cost me?
Yes, so a great question. So there's a couple important things to know about Ember. The first one is that it does require Foundry Virtual Tabletop. Foundry VTT is the only way to play this. So you do need to own Foundry Virtual Tabletop. And by you, I do mean one person in your group. It doesn't have to be the game master. Usually it would be the game master. It tends to usually be the game master that gets this, but it does not have to be. It can be a player and then someone else handles the GM duties. But one person at the table needs to own Foundry VTT. Now, if you don't already own Foundry VTT, you can get Foundry Virtual Tabletop as part of the Ember Kickstarter as an add-on at a reduced price. So Foundry VTT is usually $50, but you can get Foundry VTT half off if you get it along with Ember on the Kickstarter if you don't already own it. Now, secondly, Ember itself is a paid product because it is this incredible epic length campaign spanning multiple years of gameplay. It is something that is a large product. It's kind of analogous to something like Pathfinder Kingmaker. It's honestly a little bit bigger than that in terms of its size. So Ember is going to retail at around $100. Final price is not exactly set in stone. On Kickstarter, it is cheaper than that as a bonus for backing us early and supporting, although there are, of course, tiers on the Kickstarter where you can get more, you can get additional accessories or add-ons or exclusives. We have a hardcover setting book published in collaboration with our friends at Mage Hand Press. It's going to be a beautiful sort of companion. Obviously, Ember's a digital product, but having that book on your shelf with all of this amazing artwork and all of the rich lore about the setting is something that, if you're a collector, that may appeal to you. There's all kinds of things that you can get at Kickstarter, but the final, after Kickstarter, Ember will retail for probably $100. We will see exactly what the final price is, but we don't have to choose that today, but that's the current thinking.
Okay, well, you can check out more about Ember over on their Kickstarter page. That's going to be in the description of the video. Obviously, this looks like a fantastic product. We can't wait to dig in more. We have so many more questions that we could ask you, but we do want to wrap this up at a decent hour, so we're going to wrap things up here. Thank you, Andrew, for showing off Ember. This was a blast. Again, be sure to check out the Kickstarter, and we hope it does really well. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much, Christian. I appreciate the opportunity to get a chance to show off what we've been up to, and hopefully some folks that are watching this are really intrigued to see more. If you are interested, please stop by the Kickstarter page, which I suspect will be linked somewhere related to this video, but also foundryvtt.com if you're interested in Foundry Virtual Tabletop itself, foundryvtt.com/ember. For a lot more about EMBER itself, to learn more about the setting. The video on Kickstarter helps to showcase some of these features, and then we'll be posting sort of blog style updates all throughout the Kickstarter campaign to showcase, certain aspects of the game in deeper detail. And then also, if you don't mind me cross-promoting something for a moment, if you want to see EMBER being played and get a more authentic look at like what is it like to play in this setting, in this game, we have an amazing limited 4-part actual play with our friends at Glass Cannon Network. They're a well-known live play group, and those are running each week throughout the Kickstarter on Wednesdays. So that's an amazing opportunity if you want to like get sort of an unfiltered look at like, so what does EMBER actually play like? Definitely check that out.
Okay, well, that's a fantastic way to end things. Be sure to check all that out. Thank you so much for watching the video. Be sure to hit those like and subscribe buttons if you haven't done so already. Leave some comments about EMBER and your thoughts about it below. And until next time, thank you so much for watching.